press a simple button, warm water flows, and your waste disappears down a pristine porcelain bowl. You never have to think about it again. This sparkling modern convenience feels like a basic human right. Your bathroom is a fortress of hygiene, protecting you from invisible threats. But this porcelain magic is a remarkably new invention. For 99% of human history, dealing with this biological need was awesome. You might imagine your ancient ancestors as filthy creatures, living in squalor and constantly battling. Popular culture paints the Stone Age as a dirty, disease-ridden nightmare. We assume modern civilization rescued us from this unhygienic misery. But the fossil record tells a shocking story. The truth is, your prehistoric ancestors were likely much cleaner than the people of the Middle Ages. Ancient hunter-gatherers rarely suffered from the infectious diseases that plague us today. They possessed a powerful survival tool that we have completely lost. They never stayed in one place long enough for their waste to become a problem. Their entire survival strategy was built on constant movement. The vast prehistoric forest was the ultimate self-cleaning system. When you needed to go, you simply walked a short distance away from the group. In the open wild, sunlight, soil microbes, and scavenging insects quickly. You didn't have a door to lock, but the endless wilderness offered a different kind of privacy. And more importantly, it offered safe. For 300,000 years, this nomadic strategy worked flawlessly. Your body evolved in a world where waste was left behind, not lived with. But everything changed when humans made a radical decision. A choice that would trap us with our own filth and unleash an era of plagues. Around 10,000 years ago, your ancestors traded their nomadic freedom for the stability of farming. They built massive permanent settlements like Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey. For the very first time, humans stopped. But these protective walls created a terrifying new problem. By staying in one place, they were suddenly trapped with their own biological waste. Anthropologist Jared Diamond famously called agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. And hygiene is a major reason why. In a nomadic band, waste was left for nature to recycle. In a crowded village, it simply piled up right outside the front door. And humans were not alone anymore. They began domesticating animals, bringing large herds of cattle and pigs right into their small living spaces. Mountains of animal manure mixed with human waste in the streets. The early village became a perfect breeding ground for invisible microscopic nightmares. They found a massive spike in bone lesions and severe infectious diseases. The ancient bones revealed that these early settlers were shorter, sicker, and lived in far worse overall health. When it rained, the accumulated filth washed directly into the rivers and wells. The very water you needed to survive became highly toxic. This is exactly how devastating diseases like cholera and dysentery first entered the human story. We literally poisoned our own drinking water supply. You could not just walk away anymore. Your crops were here. Your house was here. You were heavily chained to the agricultural land. So, early humans had to invent a completely new solution. The concept of the toilet was not born out of a desire for luxury. It was born out of desperate biological necessity. If they did not figure out a way to manage the filth, the village would collapse. The very first sanitation systems were just crude pits dug deep into the earth. It was humanity's first attempt to outsmart their own biology. As populations exploded, these simple dirt pits were no longer enough. Humans started building massive stone cities. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You might imagine towering castles and noble knights, but the reality of daily life was far less glamorous. Inside those thick stone defensive walls, thousands of people lived shoulder to shoulder, and they still had to deal with their most basic biology. For royalty, the clever solution was the garderobe. It was a tiny room built into the side of the castle, featuring a simple stone seat with a hole. When the king used this medieval toilet, gravity simply did the rest. The waste dropped straight down the outside of the castle wall. It often landed directly into the moat, turning the defensive water barrier into a foul, toxic swamp of human excrement and bacteria. If you were a common peasant living in the crowded village below, you didn't even have a garderobe. You relied entirely on a chamber pot. At night, you would relieve yourself into this simple wooden or clay bucket kept right next to your bed. But where did it go the next morning? Without a proper plumbing system, many people simply tossed the contents of their chamber pots straight out of their windows and into the narrow streets. The streets of medieval Europe effectively became open, flowing sewers. The stench was unimaginable, and it clung to everything you owned. This created the perfect breeding ground for rats and fleas. The Black Death wiped out milled by part fuels. To prevent medieval cities from completely drowning in their own filth, a dark and terrible new profession had to be born. These were the men who worked exclusively in the dead of night. Their brutal job was to manually dig out the massive, overflowing cesspits beneath the city. You would stand waist-deep in toxic sludge, shoveling human waste into buckets in complete darkness. They were paid very well, but many died from suffocation by toxic gases. For centuries, the filth only multiplied. By the Industrial Revolution, cities like humanity was forced to innovate. The breakthrough came when Alexander Cumming perfected the S-trap. This simple curved pipe uses a small pool of water as a natural seal, physically blocking toxic sewer gases from flowing back into your home. For the first time in 10,000 years, it was safe to bring the toilet back inside the house. Modern plumbing had finally arrived. Today, you live in the most sanitized environment in all of human history. You are armed with antibacterial soaps, chemicals. You might assume that this intense obsession with extreme cleanliness, but it is actually a deeply member. For 300,000 years, your hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't need to scrub their hands with harsh chemicals to survive. But when humans trapped themselves in crowded, disease-ridden villages, your brain had to adapt. It developed something called the behavioral immune system. This is the true source of your feeling of disgust. It is an evolutionary alarm bell, designed to keep you away from invisible microscopic threats. When you smell rotting garbage or step in a foul puddle, that intense wave of revulsion is simply your prehistoric brain screaming at you. But in our modern era, we have taken this ancient survival mechanism to an extreme. We have waged a ruthless war against all microbes. This leads us to a fascinating scientific idea called the hygiene hypothesis. By eliminating absolutely all dirt, without the harmless natural microbes that your body evolved alongside, your modern immune system gets bored and confused. Scientists believe this is exactly why autoimmune diseases and severe allergies have skyrocketed in the modern, ultra-clean system. We successfully escaped the deadly plagues of those early farming villages. Many scientists call this phenomenon the loss of old friends, CREP, harmless microorganisms that your body once lived with. For hundreds of thousands of years in the wild, it was precisely these microorganisms from the soil and dirt that trained your immune system. By pouring concrete over the wild and sanitizing our living spaces, we have unwittingly locked our most ancient allies outside. That's why many of today's pediatricians advise that letting kids play in the dirt is actually incredibly good for them. The immune system finds its natural habitat through contact with the wild world it was designed for. Modern plumbing and sanitation systems have saved billions of lives from deadly waterborne diseases. Undoubtedly, the flush toilet is one of the greatest inventions of all time.
Truly remarkable.
I must agree. What a magnificent artifact. The true challenge for modern humanity is striking the perfect balance between these two distinct worlds. While we need the safety of modern sanitation, we must not completely cut ourselves off from the wild natural world our bodies were built for. So, the next time you step into your gleaming modern bathroom and see that familiar toilet, take a second to reflect on the wild and bloody evolutionary journey that forced us to create this very room. This modern convenience didn't come about because humans evolved to be perfectly clean and sterile. It was born because your ancestors made a risky decision to stop moving, settle down, and trap themselves in crowded cities. You push a button, the water rushes in, and the waste vanishes. It's not magic, it's the only way your primal body can survive in this modern world.